Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business of Unicorns podcast. I'm here with Mr. Mark Fisher. Mr. Mark Fisher, how the hell are you?
I am doing well, but a little tired. But
Yeah. No, I feel like I love this time of year. We're recording this in the fall, and fall in New York and up where I live is so magical. But every single weekend I have guests. Every single weekend there's people at my house who want to pick the apples and take pictures in the cornfields, which is so much fun. But similarly, I'm like, there's not an empty moment these days, which is part of how we like it. And then once in a while we have a day to exhale and complain about it.
yes.
All right. Well, speaking of staying busy, we have a workshop coming up. And before we dive into the specifics of the workshop itself, I think there's a really interesting conversation this workshop has sparked us to think even more about. Not that we don't think about this all the time anyway, but which is the idea that so many of our members who, especially when they first join Unicorn Society, that what we come to help them realize is that there often are some kind of fatal flaws in their business model. Right. In some of the foundational choices they made and how they initially set up their business, there's a few things that are really tying their hands behind their back. And as we know, one, that's a hard realization to make about this thing that you've built, right? That you made a choice at some point that is really holding you back. And two, to actually make the change requires a lot of strength and kind of bravery and commitment.
Yes.
That's tough. So we want to talk, and the workshop in some way that we'll tell you about is about this topic, right? It's about helping you understand what these kind of foundational decisions are and how to switch course if you're on the wrong one. Yep. But let me just talk a little bit about when we throw around the term kind of business model. What does that mean to you, Fisher? Like, let's set the stage.
Yeah. Wow. Good question. Because I think we're on the same page about this. I mean, for me, I think about what are the services that you offer, right? Mm-hmm. How many, and what are the terms you offer at, which is to say, what is the price you're offering at? What is the commitment that you're asking for? It sort of starts there, I think, related, but maybe slightly different than the business model, I think, is also how you're utilizing the capacity, which is both like the utilization of what you're offering and how much square footage you have, which may or may not be what you need. Yeah. And then related to that, finally, how efficient is your business model, which is to say, how much does it cost to fulfill the services? And is there anything left over for you, right? And we have, of course, have some benchmarks and some standards we look at. And I would note for live attendees, we're going to be letting them have access to what is typically only a resource for Unicorn Society members, which is our Big Five assessment, which is a very effective wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, opportunity to sort of quickly assess how your business is doing compared to some widely accepted industry standards. I would note if you can attend live, we will be providing the recording for registered paid attendees only, just because that's fair. It's a paid event. So this will not be going out to the whole list, but if you can attend live, although you will not get the actual spreadsheet, you'll still be able to do the math. It won't be that complicated. You'll have access to the numbers that we use. You'll just have to use a calculator rather than use a spreadsheet. So that's what I think about when I think about the business model, but I'll kick it back over to you to see if there's any.
Yeah, I agree. I think when we think about running a business, we often use the analogy of like this game that we're playing, right? Yep. So when I think of business model, often the analogy I'll go to, it's like, it's the rules you set up for how your game is played, right? And that goes to all the things you just mentioned, which is how much things cost you, your rent and your people and all the decisions you make along the way, the expenses you choose to prioritize and deprioritize are rules that you set up. Also, how much you charge people for your services, what those services are, the terms of being charged, weekly, monthly, etc. How high, how low, how many levels, how much commitment, right? Those are all big choices you make. And even just those kinds of rules that you set up really determine how easy or hard it is for you to win in this game.
Yes.
Right. And I can't even count on my fingers and toes at this point the number of Unicorn Society members who came in and just had the most basic thing wrong, which was they had too much space.
Yeah.
Their rent was just over 25% of their revenue each month. And it's not like they didn't have that many members. They've been around for years, but they couldn't outsell this huge space that they had. And the minute they got rid of space, boom, profitable. The game's easier to win repeatedly, month after month, year after year. And some people are the same on the other end, where they're just not charging enough. Yep. Some people are paying their team too much, right? So there's some benchmarks that we have in that Big Five tool Mark mentioned that people will get who come to this workshop. But I think even for those of you who, for whatever reason, are not coming to this workshop, it's really helpful to think about what decisions have I made about how I run this business that I just kind of take as a default setting and which ones should I really re-examine that might not be serving
Yeah.
me well anymore? And yeah, we could have this whole podcast about things we had to redo at
Oh
Mark
yeah.
Fisher Fitness over
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
We realized, oh, that decision's not serving us
Yep.
anymore.
Yep.
And so we're not immune to this, right? Everyone hopefully is thinking and rethinking about the rules they set up in their business. But tools like the Big Five make it really easy. So for all of you wanting to come to the workshop, it's worth it to come just to get that tool in and of itself. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah, the dream would be everybody can go back in time and just go to businessunicorns.com/courses and just watch Open Strong first. Just do Open Strong. It's very affordably priced. It's designed for this. Because the reality is, like, listen, and this is the thing that there's no way of avoiding. It just is what it is. And by the way, like, if you're listening to this, here's what I can guarantee. You made some horrible, fatal flaws that are up, one. And two, you'll fix it. It's going to hurt like hell, but you'll fix it. We did too. It's fine. I have a dream of a new generation of gym owners that are going to start to learn this stuff in advance and not have to bear the maelstrom, the hurricane gale force winds of undoing these like really bad decisions as far as how much space they took on or what the rent they had or what they priced it at or what they promised to pay people. It's much easier to not make the mistake up front, but rest assured, you almost certainly have made these mistakes and we can still help you, right? Now, some of them are easier to fix than others, right? But in practice, even if you have too much space, you can talk to your landlord about subdividing. You can potentially find a subletter. In a worst case scenario, you could, if you had to move, now that's not cheap, that may or may not make sense. Pricing, kind of the same thing, right? The reality is, even if you're priced under half of what you should be, you can get up there. It might take you a minute. You're going to lose clients. People will never forgive you. And it's sad because if you'd always had those prices, probably some of those same individuals wouldn't think anything of it, but they've now been anchored to your previous assessment of your own value. I think one other point I'll drill down onto, I've been thinking a lot about recently that I think of maybe the atomic unit of gym business solvency is the average revenue per client per month as it pertains to the coach to client ratio. Right. And we have some backup numbers we think of. Like I tend to think in any market, you're going to want at least 320 average revenue per month if you're running a 6-on-1. If you're running an 8-on-1, then that number can probably go down a little bit. If you're running a 4-on-1, that number has to go up a little bit. And then we think about large group as a different animal. Usually there in most markets, we're looking for at least 185 with at least 15 people or more. Now, if you're, perversely calling 12-on-1 small group, wouldn't be the term I would use, my angels. I understand why you're doing it. It might be hard to convince somebody that's personal training 12 people at a time, but if you can do it, go get down with your bad self. The reason being in balance, it seems like once you're more than 6, and I'd say it's certainly more than 8, it's really hard to say, oh, this is personal training. It's going to start to feel like a class, right? And by the way, that's not wrong. That model can work. You just have to, again, adjust all the pricing. Because I circle back to this again to say the atomic unit is the coach to client ratio. Because sometimes we also see a situation where someone's like, oh yeah, the average revenue per month is working. It makes perfect sense. We have 6 people at a time in our small group personal training and it's $375 on average person. We're like, amazing, great. And then you find out that they have 2 coaches at a time running it. So it's really a 6-on-2, which is not a 6-on-1. So now the numbers don't work anymore, right? Because at top level, if you're looking downstream, right, and I'll come back to upstream in a minute, but if you're looking downstream, the first filter is going to be gross, right? What is the gross profit on fulfilling your services, which is a function of how much does it cost per hour or per month to fill services compared to how much money you're making per hour or per month, right? Some people look at this number hourly. I actually tend to think more about this on a monthly basis because it's a little bit easier to figure out, but you can make a case for either. So another way to do this is like, okay, if your gym is making $10,000 per month, how much does it cost per hour per month to fulfill those actual services, right? So we're separating any sort of overhead of the business. We're talking about like, what is the cost of service? Sometimes called cost of goods sold, but if we're being technical in our industry, it should be technically cost of service, but it's the same idea, right? Now, at the risk of losing everybody completely, right, I'll say that's top down, right? So if you don't get that right, it's going to be really hard for there to be anything left over the bottom. However, we could look at it from bottom up, right? Because on the other hand, if you've done the math and you are making 30% left over after you pay people to do all the work of the business, and you're only doing owner level tasks, and it's only costing you 70 cents total on the dollar, well, F what we know, I guess, then it's working for you. Like at the end of the day, like that's what matters most. But the reality is, although we will look at that, that's one of the things we're always going to be assessing is how much does it cost you for non-owner expenses to run the business. If that is not working, usually the issue is at the top of the funnel. The issue is like, okay, well, how much does it cost to fulfill your sessions? Which is why I'm a believer, like the average revenue per month per client as it compares to the coach to client ratio is the mother spring from which all other profitability flows, or as the case may be, does not flow.
Yeah. It's exactly, it's kind of where your kind of expenses and memberships and, and your rates all kind of collide into that kind of those metrics. Well, I think, that's one area where I know people, can make mistakes. It's just the finances of all the financial decisions you make when starting a business. And I know that's going to be something you cover in the workshop, but I think another really important area where people set up habits early when they're starting a gym is how they, as the owner, spend their time. Right? They often really dig themselves into this is what gets my time and attention every day. This gets into my time and attention every week, every month. And by default, they're making these choices early on, oftentimes based on what they're good at, what they like doing, doing the things they already have the answers to. And the stuff that often gets swept under the rug or just ignored completely are the things that are a little harder, things a little stickier, things that no one has the right answers to, things that make them uncomfortable, right? And so at some point we see there's also a kind of reset that has to happen with a lot of folks we work with, where they have to just real have that, come to whoever moment. Maybe it's a come to Jesus moment, come to Buddha moment, right? Come to mama moment, right? and say, okay, well, this is how I have been spending my time, and it's gotten me these results. What happens if I spend my time on these things instead? Can I get different results? And so I know you talk about, I think you have something in the workshop called the gym owner task hierarchy. Can you just talk a little bit about, just broadly speaking, about how we think about how gym owners spend their time?
Yeah, so Mark Fisher super fans will be familiar with the gym owner task hierarchy. It's made into a lot of emails and Instagram posts over the years. But essentially, I kind of think there's like 5 buckets of things that gym owner can do, and each of them track with a certain amount of financial value, which is to say, for X amount of dollars in any given market, you could replace this task for this many dollars, or you have somebody else do this, right? So the very high level overview is there's like manual labor tasks, which are low value, low skill tasks that exist in the world of brick and mortars, which is everything from taking up and down the holiday decorations to changing the toilet paper to overseeing cleaning. Then you have the administrative tasks, which are often more kind of white collar digital labor, which are mostly doing things in the booking billing platform, updating classes. This could be bookkeeping, could be filling out like legal or financial paperwork, which again, needs to be done properly, but doesn't necessarily need you to be the one to do it. Then when you get up to the third tier, now it's like the fulfillment of the services. And for a lot of you in the beginning, when you're the independent trainer plus and you're making most of your money for fulfilling the sessions yourself or doing whatever the coaching product you offer is, it makes sense to outsource any administrative or manual tasks because you're more valuable to the business actually coaching and fulfilling the services. At a certain point, you make the quantum leap and you become more valuable moving up to the next 2 tiers, in which case you also now want to start delegating the coaching services because you're more valuable doing marketing and sales activities and then ultimately leadership activities, right? Because at a certain point, you are, doing things that you have to grow the business, which we'll talk about in a minute as the third piece. But you also have to lead other people because ideally, if you get good at leading, you can replicate really any of those tasks. And if we say that leadership and the building and overseeing of systems, the making sure other people are performing at a high level, if you say that's tier 1, well, that's also a snake that eats its own tail because you can, in theory, create leaders that create leaders that create other leaders. Now, this is beyond the scope and probably interests and tastes of many people listening. But if you want to have 50 gyms, you have to make leaders that can make other leaders that can make other leaders. So that's not merely just you working with, like, let's say a GM, and we've talked about in our recent podcast, check out the podcast about sous chef. But in theory, this is the opportunity to develop somebody that's a regional director that oversees a general manager and so on and so forth. So, the last I'll say about this, I think a lot about is like, it's funny because in the beginning of the game, It's like all that matters is like your time management. If you're just getting started, it's how you're using your time. It's all that matters. And then at the end of the game, all that matters is your time management. It's like how you're using your
Mm-hmm.
time, and you're leveraging it very differently. But sometimes people can't even get the thing going because they're just such in the weeds, and their approach to time is such chaos, and they're doing no delegating. They're trying to do it all on their own. They're often being, penny wise and dollar foolish, like unwilling to spend a few bucks to free up time that would be so much more valuable to the business. But then on the other end, if in when you've had some success and you're really looking to scale, you have, I think, a slightly trickier version of this. And sometimes that gets very philosophical. This is in the world of like our leadership society conversations, where now we're having more qualitative conversations around not only what does the business need, but how will you spend your one wild and precious life? Like, what do you want to do with your time? That's a slightly better problem to have and more interesting. But I often think it's interesting because in the beginning, it's all about time management. But then after you've succeeded and sort of climbed the first mountain, then it's all about time management to decide, what other mountains you want to climb, or do you want to just enjoy and hang out with your, family and just enjoy having climbed that mountain?
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that in small teams, which most all gyms are small businesses, there's only a handful of people involved. Even the biggest gyms we work with are still very small teams in the grand scheme of businesses. That like it's hard to it's easy to underappreciate. It's easy to underappreciate the force that is like the ownership's time and attention.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like as an owner, you have ultimate authority. You have ultimate power. You have ultimate, you can choose to put resources to whatever you want, whenever you want.
Yes.
And on a team of only 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 people, you have so much power that what gets your time and attention really does move mountains in your small business. And so just being relentless about and disciplined with yourself about what gets your time and attention, as Mark said, it's critical from day one all the way up to whenever you move on. It's so important. Last topic. I know we have a few more minutes here. Last topic. The other thing that I know people often make the mistake on, and we kind of hinted this a few times, kind of a foundational thing that often does not get leaders' time and attention early on, is marketing and sales. It's often those buckets are often things that people make them uncomfortable. They don't know how to do it. They feel icky about it. There's like a big learning curve. They've never done it before. No one else on their team wants to do it as much as they try. They try to delegate, but because they don't like it either, they don't delegate well. And I know you're going to cover a lot of this in the workshop. There's a lot to say about this topic, but kind of generally speaking, what are the kind of decisions people are making around marketing and sales that they might want to remake or rethink?
Yeah, I mean, I think this intersects very much with the delegation conversation because I think it's another time management issue, right? The core constraint is like, first of all, how much time you spend on your marketing sales, because sometimes it's just going to be a function of how much, to your point, attention and energy you're putting into it. And particularly if you're not good at it, then volume matters even more because you're getting poorer results for the effort you're putting in. If you're very awkward when you go to meet the business partnerships, you might need to meet 5 per week instead of 2. Because you're just not good at it, right? Again, both matter here. It's not purely a matter of spending more time as a volume. Part of it is we need to get better at whatever it is you're doing so you're more effective and you're getting better results from however you're spending your time. But for a lot of people, a lot of the game is, and that's why, and I thought about this too as I was preparing this. I think simplify has to be the first step because the model has to make sense, right? If the numbers don't work, if you have too many services, you have too much space, you have to offer too many sessions, which, by the way, is actually its own sort of time management issue. All is lost, right? Then after that, if you think about business, so that's like setting the foundation, and those are decisions you make. A lot of those decisions you make just once, or you set your standards just once. The act of getting the client and taking care of the client are ongoing systems that we're always working, we're always iterating, right? And again, this is an imperfect model, but follow me on this. So for the purposes of this conversation, I am going to say once the foundation is right, I want to help you understand what you can delegate and get off of your plate to free up more time to do marketing. But it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg because sometimes you can't delegate because you don't have any money because you haven't done any marketing, so you don't have enough clients.
Yeah.
And it is fascinating to me. And it's normal, and I'm not putting you on blast here if this is you, dear listener, but it is fascinating to me how often a gym owner is not happy with the amount of either money they're making or the clients they're serving, and they feel they're working too much and they're not getting the benefit that they want for the amount of effort and stress they're putting in. And they will just go month after month of having 5 to 10 leads. Like, that's just not going to happen. Like, you're just not going to see any growth of that. Like, you have to figure something out, right? Now, certainly you could pull the lever of paid ads. That's expensive. I think that's oftentimes a good call, but it's not always the right call. I'm the first to admit. But outside of spending more money to get more marketing and sales, regardless, if you're not seeing the results you want there, you're going to have to spend some more time there. Because honestly, even if you open up the floodgates and spend heavily on paid ads with an ad vendor, you're going to have to do a lot more work now, because now there's going to be more leads. You're going to have to follow up with them more. They're going to be less qualified. You're going to have to do some sort of ongoing skill development for yourself and potentially other people to make sure you're good at the initial phone call, to make sure you have a well-designed sales script, right? All of that stuff is really going to matter. Because I think, that's an interesting example of marketing that I think reflects the most common mistake I see, thinking mistake with delegating. Because people often think like, oh, I'll get this off my plate and I'll never have to think about this again. And that's just not true. In the beginning, you're going to have to think about it more than you did, because it's going to be annoying, because they're going to do it wrong because they don't know how to do it. You have to train them, and you have to push through sometimes several weeks, maybe even sometimes a couple of months, where you have to spend a lot more effort than you were spending, because of course they're not good to use. They don't have as much experience doing it. But not only that, even after, let's say, 3 months of thoroughly onboarding someone to help out, let's say with something like sales, you still must inspect what you expect, right? So you still have to have some amount of your time. You're not going down to literal zero until maybe you can put, again, one day GM and that's their job. But for most of you, realistically, you're going to spend an ongoing amount of time and effort overseeing that task, right? So when you think about the marketing and sales stuff, I think how much time you're spending on a week is going to be that's maybe the atomic unit, I might say, of the marketing and sales. And again, you can get more traction by doing the delegating, but it's never going to go down to zero, because even if you outsource a lot of those things, listen, these businesses are not big enough. You're not going to outsource marketing. Like, you're going to be responsible. You're going to have to do it. You might get some help, but certainly from a strategy perspective, as people know,
even in a giant. But even in a giant company with multiple departments, thousands of employees, even if you're the CEO of that giant company, the person you're probably talking with most every day is your marketing and sales people, right? Those are the people that are getting the bulk of your time and attention, right? It's the lifeblood of every business, is that kind of lead flow and that revenue flow. And so it's going to be a big part of your job either way. But I think you're right. How much time and energy you're spending on it is a really good first indicator of whether or not you're going to have a chance of moving the ball in the right direction.
And here's a not fully fleshed out thought, but I think this is true. The biggest distinction between a Fortune 500 company and your small business as a gym owner is, in a small business as a gym owner, you don't have a lot of capital. So it's all about how you're allocating time. Capital allocation is part of it. If you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, typically you are the CFO, right? You probably weren't even marketing. You're the CFO. You have a lot of financial experience, because at that point, you're mostly allocating capital, because the allocation of your time is so much less valuable. Now, of course, again, imperfect model. Obviously, how you're spending time developing your executives or the people that are reporting direct to you is going to matter. Obviously, choosing the right staff is going to matter. Obviously, you're still responsible that's making it rain. But
the power of those dollars, the power of those dollars at that level is huge.
And also there's so much money at that level that you have a lot of you can pull a lot of levers to make certain things swing. But obviously, I think it's interesting for you to understand that. Obviously, you do consider how you allocate money is going to be part of what you decide to do. You have to make decisions as the CEO of like, okay, am I going to spend this money on an ad vendor and 3 months of meta ads, and maybe it's going to work or maybe it's not, but I'll spend 15 grand over the next 3 months? Or do I want to pocket some of that and or hire some more help, hire another staff member, an admin with a fraction of that, and then maybe put some of it towards like a business partnership, and now I'm going to give up more time because now I have to like spend more time going to the community, but maybe I'm choosing to take some of that off the table and take a distribution, but I'm then investing for my family. It's all Dungeons and Dragons as far as I'm concerned. It's the Dungeons and Dragons. You beat the orc, you get X many points, and then you have to decide, okay, do I allocate this to agility? Do I allocate this to spellcraft? Do I allocate this to restore some of the health points that I lost in that last melee.
Yeah. All of the nerds out there, thank you for the gaming analogies. Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, let's wrap things up here and say maybe a little bit more about this actual workshop that's coming in, because what, dear listeners, what we've been hinting at and talking about and sorting through and wading through is all these giant list of decisions you all make about how you run your business. And I think all of them really matter, and you can change your mind, and probably should change your mind about a lot of them on a somewhat regular basis, at least reconsider. And I think that's part of what this workshop is all about. So Fisher, you want to just tell everyone the details about when and where and how?
Yep. So you should be able to click a link right here in the show note. It is happening Thursday, October 30th at 11 a.m. EST. It's 90 minutes long. We'll probably, I'm never going to like do a hard stop, because if there's questions, I want to make sure there's time for Q&A. I'll hang out as long as people want. And you can click the link and sign up. It's $99. You will get access to the live recording if you sign up. And since time management is such a big thing, is I think a particularly cool bonus. Usually our time management for gym owners course is $399, and you'll get access for free just by signing up for this. We'll also toss in a free ticket for one of our 2026 Unicorn Society retreats and an implementation call, because of course the principles are great, but we have to figure out how you are going to make the sausage. So all of that is included as well. I'll reiterate again, if you're busy, that's absolutely no problem. $99 is the way to get the recording. I will say, because when people can do things whenever they do them never, you will only have 7 days of access. So it will be an exploding recording. But this way, you don't feel, if you can't get there, or maybe you just don't want to spend the time, you just want to listen to it on double speed later. Good luck with how fast I talk. But if you can actually listen to me on double speed without your brain exploding, I would like to know you, because I'll feel seen and met.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's such a great value for all the things that are going to get covered, all the tools you're going to be offering, all the frameworks. Everything that we talked about today is going to be part of the conversation in the workshop. And so if you want all the numbers we talked about in terms of financial benchmarking, if you want that list that Mark talked about on how gym owners should be spending their time, it's all in there. It's all part of this workshop. So if this conversation felt valuable, go for it. Double down, jump in, go to the workshop, and you'll get all the actual tools you can use right away to make a difference in your business. Yeah. Go click that link below. All right, my friend. Well, thanks for a great conversation as always. I think it's going to be a kick-ass workshop, and I think everyone who listens better go. I'm threatening them. That was me being threatening. Yeah. Yeah, being threatening. Awesome. Well, thank you, sir. And dear listeners, I'll see you on the next one, y'all. Have a kick-ass day.
Bye.